This is just too unfair to Robinson. And everyone in that Dodgers front office knows it. Ben Rortvedt is coming home. Not as a rumor. Not as a whisper from anonymous sources. Officially. Confirmed. A 1-for-1 trade, a 2-year contract, and a city that hasn't stopped talking since the moment the news broke. The Dodgers front office made their move. And somewhere in that clubhouse, the ripple effects are already being felt in ways nobody fully expected. Because this isn't just a trade story. This is a Shohei Ohtani story. And when something is a Shohei Ohtani story, nothing about it is simple. Let's go back to the moment it started. It was not a quiet afternoon in the Dodgers front office. These things never are. Trades of this magnitude don't happen in silence. They happen after weeks of calculation, after phone calls that stretch past midnight, after someone in that building finally decides the price is right and the timing is now. The GM made it official. One player out. One player back in. Ben Rortvedt returning to Los Angeles on a 2-year deal. The moment that news hit the wire, the reaction was immediate. Fans flooded every corner of the internet. Former teammates sent messages. Beat reporters scrambled for their phones. The Dodgers faithful, already riding high on a season that has felt electric from the very first week, erupted in a way that only a city like Los Angeles can when something feels right. But not everyone in that building was celebrating. There is always a cost to a trade. That is the nature of the game. You give something to get something. And in this case, what the Dodgers gave was a piece of their roster. A name. A player who had worked, prepared, and shown up every single day believing he belonged in blue. Robinson didn't ask to be part of this equation. Nobody ever does. The news hit him the way trade news always hits the player on the wrong end of it, without warning, without ceremony, and without the luxury of time to process what it means. One moment you are a Dodger. The next moment, the front office has decided you are the price of someone else's return. The room where Robinson received the news was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like silence. It feels like pressure. It feels like everything you've worked towards suddenly shifting beneath your feet. Bad news for Robinson. That part of the headline is not dramatic exaggeration. That part is real. And then there is Ohtani. This is where the story becomes something different entirely. Because Shohei Ohtani is not a passive character in any story that involves his clubhouse. He is the center of everything the Dodgers are building, everything they are protecting, and everything they are thinking about when October arrives. When Ben Rortvedt's name came across the wire, Ohtani knew immediately what it meant. Not just for the roster. Not just for the standings. He knew what it meant for him specifically. Rortvedt and Ohtani share something that goes beyond a batting order. They share a dynamic that the Dodgers front office has been quietly monitoring for months. The chemistry between them on the field is real. The way Rortvedt moves in a lineup, the way he creates space, the way he forces opposing managers to make decisions they don't want to make, all of it benefits the player standing a few spots away in that same order. That is why the GM made this move. Not for sentiment. Not for nostalgia. For Ohtani. But something else happened in that clubhouse. Something that nobody on the outside was prepared to see. The word that spread through the building was not celebration. Not immediately. It was destruction. Ohtani destroyed the locker. Not metaphorically. Not as a figure of speech. In the raw, physical, unfiltered reaction of a competitor who has spent months carrying the weight of this team on his shoulders, something broke loose. Equipment. Personal items. The kind of controlled chaos that happens when a person who is always in command of himself temporarily loses that grip. Nobody who witnessed it was entirely sure what triggered it in that precise moment. Was it the relief of finally getting a piece that had been missing? Was it the tension of a season that has demanded everything from him, week after week, without pause? Was it something about Rortvedt specifically, about what that reunion means to Ohtani personally? The answer is probably all three. And here is the thing about moments like that. They are not signs of weakness. In a clubhouse full of professional athletes, controlled emotions are the norm. Measured responses. Carefully worded quotes. Expressions designed to give nothing away. When someone breaks from that pattern, when someone lets the walls down even for 60 seconds, the people in that room pay attention. They remember it. Ohtani's teammates saw something raw. Something real. Something that told them, without a single word being spoken, how much this moment meant to the man who matters most to everything the Dodgers are trying to accomplish. The front office press conference happened later that afternoon. The GM walked to the podium with the calm, measured energy of someone who had spent weeks preparing for this exact moment. He had fielded the questions in his mind 100 times already. He knew what the reporters would ask. He knew what the fans wanted to hear. He began with the straightforward part. The structure of the deal. The timeline. The terms of Rortvedt's 2-year contract and the logic behind the one-for-one framework that made the trade possible. But a reporter asked the question that moved the room. What does this trade mean for Shohei Ohtani specifically? The GM paused. Not for drama. For accuracy. Because that question deserved a real answer, not a polished non-answer wrapped in organizational language. He leaned slightly forward. His hand stayed flat on the podium. And he spoke in the careful way that people speak when they know that every word will be replayed and analyzed. We believe that the players around Shohei matter. We believe the lineup construction matters. We believe that giving him the right environment, the right teammates, the right protection, the right dynamic, is part of how we help him be what he is capable of being at the highest level. He stopped there. That was enough. The room understood what he was saying without needing him to say it more plainly. This trade was built around Ohtani. Not because Ohtani needed saving. But because the front office understood that the difference between a great season and an October that no one forgets is sometimes one player. One name. One piece that makes everything else function the way it was designed to. Rortvedt is that piece. The reunion element of this story is impossible to separate from the rest of it. Ben Rortvedt has been here before. He knows this organization. He knows the weight of playing in Los Angeles, the expectations that come with putting on this uniform in this city in a season where anything less than a championship is considered a failure. He has felt what it is like to leave. He now knows what it feels like to be brought back. That knowledge matters. Not in a sentimental way. In a practical, baseball way. A player who returns to a place he has already experienced doesn't need time to adjust. He doesn't need weeks to find his rhythm in a new clubhouse. He doesn't need to learn the culture because he helped build it. Rortvedt walks back into that environment ready. Day 1. And Ohtani will be standing there when he arrives. The image of those two together again, in the same dugout, in the same lineup, working through the same goal, is the image the Dodgers front office saw in their minds when they decided the price of this trade was worth paying. Robinson's name will fade from the immediate conversation. That is the uncomfortable truth of professional sports. The player who is traded becomes part of someone else's story almost immediately. His chapter in Los Angeles ends the moment the deal is finalized, and a new chapter begins somewhere else, in a different uniform, with different teammates who will judge him only on what he does from this moment forward. That is not cruelty. That is the shape of the game. But in the hours after the news broke, before the attention shifted entirely to Rortvedt and Ohtani and what this reunion means for the Dodgers' October ambitions, there was a moment, brief but real, where the people inside that building remembered what Robinson gave. What he showed up to do every single day. What it cost him to be the name that made this trade possible. Bad news for Robinson. True. Unavoidably true. But the sport does not stop moving. The calendar does not wait. The standings do not adjust themselves out of sympathy. What the Dodgers have done is make a statement. Not with words. Not with a press conference talking point or a social media post carefully designed to generate engagement. With a transaction. With the most honest signal any front office can send about its ambitions, a trade that costs something real, executed at a moment in the season when the margin for error is shrinking. The GM made this move. The contract is signed. Rortvedt is coming back. The fans are going wild. Robinson is absorbing a difficult reality. And Ohtani who carries everything, who shows up every single day as both the reason this team wins and the reason every opposing manager loses sleep, felt something powerful enough to destroy a locker. That alone tells you everything you need to know about what this trade means. Not for the roster. Not for the standings. For him. And when it matters for Ohtani, it matters for the Dodgers. The front office knew that. That is exactly why they made the call.